Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am going to be doing kind of a story time tonight, and this brought back memories. I was thinking about it today because my son's birthdays are coming up. They both were born on December the 17th, 3 years apart. So, as you know, Chris, y'all know Chris, but I don't know that y'all really know my other son, Brandon. He's not really on my channel that much, not because I don't want him to be, or not because he don't want to be, but he's busy, and you know, they live probably about 35-40 minutes from here, so I don't get to see him near enough. So I'm going to be doing a story time tonight about Brandon. He was due on February the 14th, 1985, and he was born December the 17th, like I said, 1985. So he was born 2 months early. And when he was born, he weighed 3 pounds, 12 ounces. So he had to stay in the hospital until he was 5 pounds or more. So, after, I got out of the hospital first, obviously, after, having him. And I hated leaving him. I really did. I mean, I hated him, the thought of him being in the NICU and having tubes, to him. And it was very sad for me. And it was right, a week before Christmas. And I didn't get to, have my baby with me at Christmas time. But I did, go up to the hospital a lot and, be with him. And then when he was closer, he got out of the NICU and he was closer to being that 5 pounds, I had to go up to the hospital and stay with him. And I done everything for him. I would feed him, and I would, change him and bathe him and everything for him, because at that point he was, well enough to be out of the NICU, but not at the proper weight for me to bring him home. So, and he was a tiny, tiny little thing. I remember putting him in preemie clothes, and he was a little bitty baby. But anyway, so I would go up there into the hospital, and I stayed for 2 weeks before he got to that 5 pound mark. And I mean, he was a good eater. When the moment I went back up there to, stay with him, and we checked into a room, or I checked into a room, and I remember the room was, the nurse's stations or certain spot, and then the hallway, there was a long hallway beside the nurse's station, and our room was all the way back at the end of the hall. And there was another lady in there with me for a little while, and we had a semi-private room, and because that's, all my insurance would pay for, and I didn't mind because it gave me somebody to talk to. And so anyway, then I think it was about 3 or 4 days into, me being there with him, every day, every night, and bonding with him finally. And, I mean, he was fine. He was, sleeping all night. I had to wake him up every 2 hours. So I'd have to set my clock every 2 hours and wake him up so, that he could eat. And because he, wasn't strong enough to, I guess wake himself up, or he just wasn't, he didn't know he needed to eat every 2 hours. So, anyway, I remember the lady that I was in the room with, she left that day, and, she got discharged that day. And then the very next day, I was in there with Brandon by myself, and, I would have a, few visitors, but not a lot of visitors. And so, I'm trying to remember, and it's been a long time ago, Brandon. It's been 32 years ago. Almost 33 years ago. But, anyway, the way this happened was, since I was all the way down the hallway, there wasn't a lot of activity around my room, or, not a lot of people walking by. And, so I remember one night, it was, after dinner, after they had already brought me a tray and everything, after I'd already fed Brandon dinner, and, his bottle, obviously, he didn't have a cheeseburger. Brandon, I know you want that cheeseburger. But, anyway, this, guy, and I still freak out when I think about it, how close we came to disaster, how close we came to not only losing Brandon when he was born, but losing him in this particular instance. There was a guy roaming the halls, and I don't know why, I guess that somebody thought it was just a guy that was, maybe his wife was there, or had a baby, or because we were on the, that floor, the baby floor, whatever you call it. So anyway, I had seen the guy walking and, getting closer and closer to the door to my room, and then turning around and going back. And so I thought maybe he was just lost, couldn't find where he wanted to be, couldn't find where he was supposed to be. And then after about the third or fourth time, I was really getting nervous about it, because he was really tall and really big. And I remember this exactly. I mean, I've had nightmares about this, especially right after it happened. But he had one blue eye and one, like, it was a really bright blue eye, and then the other eye was like whited out. So I don't know if he just couldn't see out of that eye, or if he was, if he was blind in that eye. I don't know, but he was really scary looking. And so I remember when he got a few feet away from my room, the door to my room, I remember going near the button that you can push to call for the nurses. But I knew if I did, that he would hear the nurses at the nurses station say, "Can we help you?" Because that's what they, that's what they do. So I was afraid that he would hear. So he came into my room and he shut the door behind him. And I was terrified. I stood beside Brandon. He was in this little, bassinet at the end of the bed. And I just didn't know what he wanted. I was terrified. And so he walked over to Brandon and reached down and touched him, and I just went into a panic mode. I said, "What do you want? Get away from him." And he said something to the effect of, "I just want to hold him." And I said, "No, you're not going to hold him. We can't hold him because he's too little. You can't hold him." And he saw me with the nurse's station button and the help button basically in my hand. And he said, "Don't push that button." And I was just, my heart stopped. I mean, y'all, I was so scared. I was scared for Brandon. I was scared for both of us. I just didn't know what he was going to do, and I didn't know what he wanted. And so, and he was just so, the way he talked, he had a deep, raspy voice, and I was terrified. I was just so scared. And he again said, "I want to hold him." And I'm like, "No, you're not going to hold him." And then so I was just like, "What do you want? Just let me know what you want. I'll give you anything that you want. Just leave my room." And I kept telling him, "Just leave the room, leave the room." And he just wouldn't. He kept, and I saw him reach into his pocket, and he pulled out a knife, and it was just a little knife, and at the time, I guess people carried pocket knives around all the time. They still do, I'm sure. And but anyway, he pulled out a knife, and I don't know that he was ever really gonna do anything with that knife. I think it was just to scare me and to, intimidate me. And it seemed like forever with him just standing there with that knife in his hand, blade out. He had pushed the button and the blade came out. And my heart, I know, just stopped beating. And I just stood there looking at him, and he was looking at me. And I had my hand on the button, and I had my hand on the bassinet where Brandon was. And he just put the knife back in the thing, put it back in his pocket, and he said, "I'll be back." And he turned around, he walked out, and I was so relieved that he walked out. I ran over to the door and locked the door, and then I pushed that button, and I told him, when the nurse come on, "Can I help you?" I told her that, I said, somebody was just in my room, and I described him, and they called him, security called him. I don't know what he wanted. I know it. Yes, ma'am? So anyway, guys, that was so scary. That had to be one of the worst days, moments of my life. I was terrified. And luckily, they caught the guy. Don't know what he wanted, don't know what he was going to do. All I know is that he was, you know, so scary. And like I said, I still have nightmares over that. My camera's flashing. I don't know what's wrong with this camera, but it's telling me I only have 4 minutes. So, anyway, I just wanted to jump on here tonight. Their birthday coming up was bringing back memories for me, and good memories mainly, but this memory, not so much. So I just thought I'd jump on here and do a story time, tell you guys about that. And luckily Brandon got out of the hospital a few days later, and he's been joy to my life ever since then. So anyway, guys, I'm gonna let y'all go. I'll see y'all on my next one. Bye, guys.